This episode is powered by Bandzoogle, the easiest all-in-one website platform for pro musicians and bands. You know who controls all your social media followers? Of course you do. Social media companies control who sees what and when they see it. Two things that will help ensure you're in control of your music business and your fan-based community are a website and an email list. Bandzoogle can help you with both. Plus, a solid website makes you look legitimate. Serious musicians, singers, songwriters, composers, and performers know this to be true. If you don't yet have your own website, check out Bandzoogle. It was created by musicians for musicians. I use it and I love it. It's as easy to use gets, and you don't have to worry about updates for things like plugins and security patches. Bandzoogle takes care of that for you. The features and support are both incredible. See for yourself. Go to bandzoogle.com to start your 30-day free trial. Use the promo code Robonzo to get 15% off your first year. Plans start at just $8.29 a month. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Robonzo, ROBONZO, to start your free trial today. Let's do the show. This is the Unstarving Musician. I'm your host, Robonzo. On this podcast, I have conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals intended to help indie artists be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love: make music. Would you like to help other independent musicians find this podcast? Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast service. It really helps. The Unstarving Musician podcast is made possible through the generosity of listeners like you. One of the easiest ways to offer support is to join the Unstarving Musician community. Just go to unstarvingmusician.com and join right there on the homepage. As a member, you'll receive from me tips and lessons you can use in your music journey. And this isn't just coming from me and my years of experience as a gigging musician. It also comes from the wisdom of hundreds of other musicians I've talked to as part of the Unstarving Musician project and podcast. You'll also get a free copy of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs ebook, and that's all free just for being part of the community. To learn more about other ways of offering your support for the podcast, please visit our sponsor page at unstarvingmusician.com/crowdsponsor. Greetings, my chickadees. Thanks for tuning in again. Today started out rough for me. Although I woke up feeling great, had a nice walk with the pooch and my lovely wife, Sammy. But I had to get out today, and our quarantine situation is stressful here. And you may be in a different place than I am, but I see the COVID crisis as serious. And maybe you're like, duh, or maybe not. Added to that, I'm trying to stay informed by listening to epidemiologists, virologists, clinicians, biomed tech founders, etc. And although they're not exactly all gloom and doom, they are a little worried too. I was worked up for a really good rant, but I'm calm now, even though talking about it is getting me a little worked up again. I think I'm mostly troubled by the ineptitude of most leaders and governments, including those in my home country and my current country of residence. It is troubling and sad and was upsetting me earlier today. But coffee, writing about today's independent musician for a freelance gig, editing episodes for you, I'm feeling better. I'm also discovering more fresh food delivery options in our area, which is, worth throwing out there. It's important for us. It's less hassle, less stress, and the food is better than most store-bought products, so it makes me happy. And I'm recording more and more music, my own single, projects for and with friends. I'm actually really enjoying recording and the learning process. And not to make myself sound smart or anything, but recording drums ain't easy. The journey has been fun, though, a lot of fun. Okay, this is another alt-in-between episode. It is episode chapter 9 of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. How to get paid. Listen to me. I can't even remember my own damn title. The title to my own damn book. How to get booked and paid what you're worth over and over again. That's the subtitle. It's kind of long, like my day's been. It focuses on subbing and creating demand for your talent. Originally, these chapters were a standalone podcast, now re-released here, a little at a time. You can find links to prior chapters in the show notes for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. I am working on a second edition I'm just about done with the first pass. Really close. Actually, I'm pretty done with it, but I've learned so much since starting the podcast, so I'm adding much of that to the new edition coming soon. I've learned a lot from all the guests I've had here who've been featured on the podcast and from several members of the Unstarving Musician community, the email list. You can join that list at unstarvingmusician.com right there on the homepage. And doing so has its perks besides, hearing my musings, and learning some of the things that I'm learning from the many musicians I talk to. But you will be the first to get a copy of the official ebook version of the second edition I'm working on, and updates about it too. So this book, it was originally published in the second half of 2016 on paperback and Kindle, both on Amazon. It's available at most ebook retailers nowadays. The backstory, if you missed prior episodes, was that I was performing a lot in the San Francisco Bay Area in the years leading up to the book. So that had a big influence on my perspective and the things I was writing about. This chapter does get into subbing and, sort of how to make yourself in demand, as the chapter title suggests, but almost everything relates to playing out live, which you probably can't do at the moment, but it will come back, and hopefully at a time when we can all be safe and at low risk. If you're listening to this chapter in sometime in 2020 during the COVID crisis, think about these principles in terms of how they can be applied to the future of gigs. That future is starting to unfold. That future may involve home recording or some new model of performing where we partner in different ways with venues, for example. Maybe you'll be involved in the new concert scene. It is going to change. Subbing may actually be more important than ever, as we've been separated from any previous band relationships that we had temporarily. So yeah, I'm super excited for the second edition. It's going to be much better, much more relevant, and I'm very excited about it, and I think you're going to love it. So again, join the Unstarving Musician community to get updates and be the first to receive the new ebook version of that. And without further ado, here's me narrating Chapter 9 of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs, recorded back in around May of 2017. Subbing and creating demand for your talent. As I've already mentioned, I'm thankful for bands that need a sub now and then. On the flip side, I also stated that bringing subs into a band's performing lineup too often can hinder good branding. A consistent lineup not only ensures a consistent sound, it also helps to develop a band's onstage personality. However, sometimes stuff happens. Enter the musician who's open to subbing for fellow players. Reasons a band might contact you for a sub can vary, but the reality is that sometimes the regular guy or gal can't make a gig. Maybe they're ill or have a personal schedule conflict. Whatever the case, subbing is a great way to fill your gig calendar. Like with other facets of getting gigs, you've got to let it be known to your fellow musicians and local music community that you're open to subbing. Nowadays, I know enough musicians that I need only put the word out to my inner circle, and the calls usually come in. The next easiest way for me to let my peers know I'm looking for extra gigs is via Facebook. Then there's Craigslist. Here's a sample ad. Pro drummer with pro gear looking for a paying gig. I currently have a regular gig, but I'm interested in making myself available to sub for other bands. Hear my demos and see my videos at link to your website's demo page. I recommend listing your geographic preferences. In my case, I'd add something like South San Francisco Bay only, no travel. If you're willing to travel, just say so in your ad. Ads with images and good font formatting will always outperform text ads with no images. That said, unless you're in a super competitive market, a plain text ad with no images will work, provided it's well worded. Pro tip, never audition for anyone who won't provide a demo. Otherwise, you're liable to find yourself in an awkward position with a group of beginners, hoping that they'll let you off the hook. Open mic nights and pro jams can also be a great place to let people know you're available. Let other musicians hear you play in these environments. Play well and you're likely to get inquiries about your availability. Just remember to be your best at every opportunity. You never know when some great musician might be in the audience. You wouldn't want to come across as unprepared, unpracticed, or perhaps a little too tipsy to play well. Another great thing about subbing is that one gig will almost always produce recommendations for another gig. We've previously looked at the pros of subbing. Now let's look at the cons. The cons of subbing. First, subbing can and almost certainly will involve a lot of prep work time on your part. Unless a band you plan to sub for plays a repertoire that you're already familiar with, you'll need to budget some hours to learn new material. Even if you know it, you'll need to budget time to make sure you really know it. As with your regular gigs, you want to go into sub gigs well prepared, and prepared to be your best. If you take on one sub gig a month for 4 or 5 months straight, all with different bands, you've signed up for a lot of prep time. If you already have a regular gig, maybe 2 regular gigs, plus a day job, plus a family, you'll want to do some careful planning. Otherwise, somebody's going to be disappointed and you're going to find yourself very frustrated. Scheduling can obviously get tricky if you're subbing with any regularity on top of gigging with a regular band. I recommend using a shared calendar with your regular bands, not only to list gig dates, but also blackout dates, i.e. dates when members are unavailable. Google Calendar is arguably the most pervasive shareable calendar. Few calendar systems are perfect, so good communication is the most important skill requirement when juggling regular gigs with sub-gigs. Another potential downside of subbing, even with the best of intentions, you may not be interested in subbing for a particular band more than once. I know that there's a rule for gigging musician that says we should never turn down a gig, but I turn down gigs all the time, and for various reasons. The thing with sub-gigs is that on occasion, you may wish that you hadn't taken a sub-gig, and you might be asked to do another one with the same band. This makes for an awkward situation. Reasons that you may not want to sub for a band more than once include feeling that it's not the right gig for you, the musicianship is not up to your preferred level, the music isn't what you hoped for, the venue was lame, or maybe you just don't particularly want to hang out with someone in the band for which you subbed. Whatever the case, you must come up with a tactful way of declining requests to sub for that band again. My recommendation, should you find yourself in this situation, is to be honest, be considerate, and be kind. I find that honesty is usually best. However, you may want to share your honest opinion with only those you trust most. There's no point in needlessly crushing anyone's ego to preserve your own. That's about it on the downside. I love subbing for bands in moderation. It's fun to play with new musicians and to explore new songs and genres. It's also great to meet a new fan base, and that's a wonderful thing. Creating demand. To make yourself available for subbing is to designate yourself as a musician for hire. As such, it's wise to create demand for your talent and service. You may also want to create demand for specific genres. Maybe your comfort zone is jazz, but not so much hard rock. Whatever the case, it makes sense to work on creating demand with the type of acts that you find appealing or that are within your proverbial wheelhouse. It's important to be very specific when speaking with others about your availability, as well as when posting your availability on social media, Craigslist, or other music-specific sites. Because being in demand as a musician is such a people-to-people business, it's a useful practice to track your contacts in a database. Your email contacts will work, but you can create demand and a gig pipeline more rapidly by being methodical with your list of contacts. Consider using a spreadsheet or a CRM, Client Relationship Management Program. There are a few free versions of CRM products, such as Zoho.com. But if your contacts list is less than 150, a spreadsheet will probably be your best bet. The information that you want to track is contact name, phone, email, conversation details, and follow-up actions. If you've never done this before, it might feel somewhat overwhelming, but it's fairly easy once you get started and make it routine. I also recommend categorizing contacts. The 3 categories I use are musician, venue, and booking contact. All 3 are important. One other thing worth tracking are general notes for each contact. It can be extremely useful to note follow-up information, important dates, facts about the contact, etc. Open your database up weekly to figure out who you can email, call, and/or visit. This is all for the sake of keeping in touch, reiterating your interest in working together, and offering to return the favor. Turn it upside down and think of something you can do for your friend or contact venue when you contact them. rather than always asking them for a sub gig or booking. Maybe you can tell a venue about a great band or artist you know, or you could share venue information with another band. I'm often recommending other bands and suggesting to friends that they check out this venue or that one when I think they'd be a good fit. Other suggestions. Contact venues at which you're booked and ask if they'd like to co-market your upcoming gig. Suggest that you co-promote across Facebook pages. Ask them if they have a press kit or specific artwork they'd like you to reference when using their name, brand, or logo in your promotional material. This shows that you're serious about promoting your gig and helping their business. If you're subbing for someone, ask the band if there's anything you can do to help out on the day of the gig. Perhaps arriving a little early to help out with the PA setup, or asking if you should plan to set up at a very specific time. This might seem trivial, but gestures such as these will help strengthen your reputation and thus help you create demand for yourself. At the end of the day, playing in multiple bands and subbing can really help you get gigs. As a student member of the Mike Johnston drum lesson community, I have the good fortune of a connection to drummer and Mike'sLessons.com production assistant Nate Martin. Nate was kind enough to weigh in on the question of how much playing in multiple bands factors into one's ability to get paying gigs. Here's what he said. There's a direct correlation between playing with as many musicians as possible and your ability to get paying gigs. First off, people have to see and hear you play. Countless hours of woodshedding in the rehearsal room is great, but it's the on-the-job experience that's necessary in order to get paid. Playing in as many groups as possible will give you a much better idea of what's to be expected, as well as how to react in various situations that will arise when working in a group setting. Therefore, your question shouldn't be, why would I do this, but what can I learn from this? The more you learn, the more you earn. Nate is known in the Mike Johnston Live Lessons camp as the busiest drummer in the Sacramento country music scene. Although he is a jazz musician, I happen to know that he does rock gigs as well. The guy gigs often and is clearly in high demand. Do you know a musician in your area that gigs a lot? Offer to buy them coffee, lunch, or a beer, and ask them for tips and advice. I find that musicians in my community are very giving and almost always willing to help one another. I'm acquainted with many local musicians, and I meet new ones all the time. I make an effort to network with these people on a regular basis. In recent months, I've found that volunteering is a great way to network with other musicians. I happen to volunteer for the music program of an organization that meets monthly. I've become good friends with a great guitar player. As it turns out, we have mutual musician friends. That relationship has actually led to new project possibilities. It's really quite amazing how networking with fellow musicians can lead to new opportunities. When it comes to creating gigs, sometimes discussion of new musical projects can lead to more gigs. I recommend that when the opportunity presents itself, that you take the initiative to create conversation. Here's an example. The aforementioned guitarist I met at the volunteer gig has expressed mutual interest in exploring a trio music project. This trio project was my suggestion. I took the initiative. We've both invited a couple of friends to the discussion and have scheduled a lunch get-together to talk music. This get-together is an opportunity for me and the other three guys, I know, 4 isn't a trio, to exchange ideas and start the groundwork of some mutually beneficial relationships. And by the way, it's not accidental that the word relationships keeps reappearing. This project may never get off the ground, but I can guarantee one thing. These guys are all going to learn a little more about my involvement in the local music scene. That's likely to lead to recommendations and referrals for other gigs. Who knows, maybe we'll start a new band together. Again, more gigs. To wrap this chapter up, I've discussed the pros and cons of subbing and how to create demand for yourself as a musician. I also touched on being methodical in your relationship building, and I pointed out the common and recurring theme of relationships. As Nate Martin of the Mike'sLessons.com family points out, there's a direct correlation between the number of musicians one plays with and one's ability to get paid gigs. Do this. Track your contacts in a spreadsheet or CRM. Play at open mic nights and jams. Keep a gig calendar. Be specific about your availability for gigs. Offer to co-market with venues. Don't do this. Expect gigs to come your way without putting forth some effort. Audition for anyone who won't exchange demo recordings. This episode was powered by ConvertKit. More than just an email marketing company, ConvertKit is focused on landing pages too, giving beginner creators everything they need to start building their email list. I've been a ConvertKit user since early 2016, and I love it. Their new free plan allows creators to make unlimited landing pages and forms. With ConvertKit, you can choose from multiple templates, add personalization and design, include an incentive email, create thank you pages, manage subscribers, and send broadcast emails. The support and educational resources offered by ConvertKit are top-notch too. That's important to me. It should be to you as well. To learn how ConvertKit can help you connect with your audience so that you can make a living doing the work you love, go to unstarvingmusician.com/convert or look for the link in the show notes for this episode. If you have feedback, questions, comments, suggestions about the podcast, my guests, me, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. You can leave me a quick voicemail right there on that page, right from your browser. All my other contact info is there too, and I'd love to hear from you. Find links for just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. Thank you for listening and sharing with your friends. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.